This is a photo we never imagined we would see in our lifetime. For 249 years, American presidents have roamed the world as untouchable figures. They bombed countries, overthrew governments, and authorized covert operations that led to the deaths of thousands of people, protected by an invisible shield called sovereign immunity. But this morning, Tuesday, January 27th, 2026, that shield shattered. At 9:17 a.m. Central European Time, the International Criminal Court in The Hague issued an official arrest warrant for Donald John Trump. Trump is not a private citizen. Trump is not a former president. This is for Donald Trump, the current president of the United States of America. From this moment on, the president cannot set foot in 109 countries without being arrested. Air Force One has effectively been grounded. NATO allies have confirmed they will enforce the order. The European Union has issued a compliance order to its 27 member states. For the first time in American history, a president is a fugitive from international justice. And the man who made this possible was his own vice president. Mike Pence ended Donald Trump's presidency with classified documents, secret recordings, and 7 months of silent collusion. Breaking news from The Hague plunged the American executive branch into chaos. ICC prosecutor Karim Khan held a press conference with charges that seemed straight out of a political thriller. War crimes, crimes against humanity, facilitation of mass killings. This is not a political accusation. It is an 89-page legal indictment filled with judicial evidence, intercepted communications, satellite imagery, survivor testimonies, and internal White House documents proving that Trump knowingly enabled Russia's war crimes in Ukraine. As we speak, the State Department is receiving official notifications from allied governments. The UK, France, Germany, Poland, Canada, Italy, Spain, all with the same message. We recognize the ICC's jurisdiction and will fulfill our legal obligations. The FAA issued an emergency order grounding Air Force One, but this order did not come from the FAA alone. It came from inside the White House. Someone in Trump's cabinet pulled the plug. The Secret Service is discussing emergency protocols for what would happen if the president attempted to travel internationally. The Pentagon is planning scenarios in which NATO allies arrest the commander-in-chief. The Treasury is modeling financial market panic. This is not a legal dispute. This is a constitutional collapse. And the evidence that triggered all this? A secret recording dated December 17, 2025. A recording in which Trump was explicitly warned that freezing military aid to Ukraine would lead to mass deaths within 96 hours. Trump's response, as recorded by Mike Pence, "They'll handle it. We are not Europe's piggy bank." 2,400 civilians died in that 96-hour window. The ICC determined that Trump's decision directly enabled these deaths. Under international law, this is a war crime. To understand how this arrest warrant represents a seismic shift in global power, context is needed. The International Criminal Court was established in 2002 to prosecute genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. The Rome Statute establishing the ICC was signed by 123 countries. The United States is not one of them. For 20 years, American presidents operated on the assumption that the ICC had no jurisdiction over Americans. Clinton signed the Rome Statute but never submitted it to the Senate. Bush withdrew from the signature entirely. Obama refused to ratify. Trump threatened ICC prosecutors investigating American soldiers in Afghanistan with sanctions. The implicit bargain was clear. The United States supports the international order, provides global military security, and in return, our leaders are exempt. The ICC investigated warlords in Africa. They prosecuted Milosevic for ethnic cleansing. In 2023, they issued an arrest warrant for Putin himself, but they never touched an American president. Until now. What has changed? 3 things. First, the evidence has become undeniable. The ICC investigated Trump's December 2025 decision to freeze $14.7 billion in military aid to Ukraine for 7 months. They interviewed survivors, analyzed satellite images showing coordinated Russian troop movements with Ukraine's dwindling air defenses, and examined intercepted Russian communications that explicitly referred to Ukraine's defense gap. Second, they found an insider. Mike Pence kept a low profile until October 2025, when he gave a speech at the Reagan Library. He spoke of leaders who abandon their allies in their darkest hour. This was interpreted as a break with Trump. 3 weeks later, ICC investigators approached Pence. They asked him to verify NSC documents. Pence didn't just verify them. He provided additional materials, handwritten notes from Oval Office meetings, his own classified briefing book, and most damning of all, a recording dated December 17, 2025. In this recording, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan clearly tells Trump, "Mr. President, if we freeze this aid, we create an exploitable defense vulnerability. Russian forces are mobilizing. Intelligence indicates they will target civilian infrastructure. The CIA concludes with 85% confidence that mass casualty events will occur within 96 hours. Trump's response is on the audio recording. They'll handle it. We're not Europe's piggy bank." 72 hours later, Russian missiles struck a children's hospital in Kharkiv. 47 dead, including 12 children under the age of 5. Ukrainian Patriot systems in Polish warehouses could have intercepted those missiles. The operators were ready. They had the coordinates. They had the launch authority. They didn't have the political permission because the systems were frozen by executive order. Third, the international community decided they were willing to take the risk. They calculated that Trump was vulnerable. His approval rating is 41%. Republican donors are fractured. They calculated that America would not go to war to protect him. So far, this calculation is holding up. Let's examine what this arrest warrant actually says because the legal mechanics are extremely important. The arrest warrant is 89 pages long, 3 sections. Section 1, facilitation. The ICC is not charging Trump with personally killing anyone. It is charging him with facilitation. Under Article 25 of the Rome Statute, you don't have to pull the trigger yourself. If you aid, encourage, or facilitate crimes through action or deliberate inaction, you are responsible. The legal standard is knowledge plus recklessness. Did the accused know his actions made the crimes possible? Did he proceed anyway? The ICC argues that Trump's executive order was not merely policy. It was a deliberate act that made specific war crimes possible. They cite 3 incidents. January 6th, Kharkiv Children's Hospital, Russian missile strike, 47 dead, including 12 children under 5. Patriot systems frozen by Trump's order could have prevented it. January 8th, Mariupol apartment complex, 183 civilians killed. Same scenario. Patriots could have prevented it. January 11th, Odessa power station. In January, power outages in sub-zero temperatures, 340 deaths from hypothermia and hospital failures. Trump knew these attacks were coming. He was briefed by the CIA. He was warned by the NSA. Yet he proceeded. This is recklessness. Under international law, recklessness is sufficient to constitute a war crime. Part 2, the Pence evidence. This is where the case becomes devastating. Pence provided the ICC with the Presidential Daily Brief, PDB, dated December 15, 2025. The PDB is the most classified intelligence document that crosses a president's desk. This PDB contained the following: Russian military preparations exploiting Ukraine's air defense gaps. The briefing stated, Russian forces are targeting Ukrainian Patriot downtime. Intelligence intercepts indicate Russian commanders are planning maximum civilian impact operations, CIA assessment. Freezing aid will lead to mass death events within 96 hours. With 85% confidence, Trump received this briefing. His signature is on the approval page. 2 days later, he froze aid. Pence also provided handwritten notes from the December 17th Oval Office meeting. Secretary of State Marco Rubio opposed the freeze. According to Pence's notes, Rubio said, "Mr. President, if we do this, our hands will be stained with blood." Literally. Trump's response, "Marco, I don't care. Ukraine is not our problem." But the smoke-filled gunshot recording. Pence recorded Oval Office meetings as part of his official note-taking duties. When ICC investigators approached him in October, Pence handed it over. The recording is 14 minutes long. It captures Sullivan explaining the intelligence assessment to Trump. Sullivan clearly states, "We assess with high confidence that Russian forces would exploit any defensive gaps to maximize civilian casualties." This is not hypothetical. Trump's voice is unmistakable. "Jake, I understand. I just don't care. We gave Ukraine $200 billion. Freeze the aid." This is not hearsay. This is the president on tape, whose decision is said to kill civilians, and yet he continues. Part 3. Jurisdiction. The United States is not a member of the ICC. We do not recognize its jurisdiction. In 2002, Congress passed the Hague Invasion Act, which gives the president the authority to use military force to rescue Americans detained by the ICC. So how can the ICC issue warrants? Territorial jurisdiction. Ukraine granted the ICC jurisdiction to investigate crimes committed on Ukrainian territory in 2015. Under the Rome Statute, if a crime is committed in a place where it has jurisdiction, the court can prosecute anyone who facilitated it, regardless of nationality. Precedent. Liberian President Charles Taylor was tried for war crimes in Sierra Leone. The court ruled that presidential immunity does not apply when facilitating transnational crimes. Trump's legal team will argue that this violates sovereignty. But the ICC's position, sovereignty does not include the right to facilitate war crimes. 109 countries recognize the ICC's jurisdiction. That means Trump could be arrested in 109 countries the moment he is seen. What happens when the president is a wanted man in half the world? First domino, NATO compliance. At 7:22 a.m. Eastern Time, the State Department received notification from 14 NATO countries: the UK, France, Germany, Poland, the Baltic states, the Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Denmark. The government recognizes the ICC's jurisdiction and will fulfill its obligation to execute arrest warrants. If Trump lands in London, Paris, or Berlin, he will be arrested. At 8:05 a.m., the EU issued a coordinated statement. All 27 member countries will enforce the order. Canada followed suit at 9 a.m. By 10 a.m., the number had reached 109 countries. Second domino, Air Force One grounded. At 6:15 a.m., the FAA issued an air traffic notice prohibiting Air Force One from filing international flight plans. The G7 summit is in Rome in June. Trump cannot attend. The NATO summit is in Brussels in July. He cannot attend. Every major international meeting is off limits. Air Force One normally refuels over Canada on transatlantic flights or uses European air bases. Not anymore. If Air Force One lands in Canadian airspace, Trump could be arrested. Third domino, market panic. When the news broke at 3:17 a.m. Eastern Time, Dow futures crashed. By pre-market trading, Dow futures were down 740 points. The dollar fell 2.3% against the euro in 30 minutes. Gold rose $85 an ounce. Your 401k is taking a hit. Currency traders are pricing in risk. If Trump defies the order and creates a diplomatic crisis, the financial fallout could be catastrophic. Fourth domino, Republican breakdown. 20 Republican senators are up for re-election in 2026. They are watching the polls, receiving calls from frightened donors, and facing pressure from defense contractors who need NATO cooperation. Senator Romney at noon. While I believe the ICC has overstepped its authority, this situation is unsustainable for American leadership. Senator Murkowski. A president who cannot represent America on the world stage cannot effectively serve. Senator Collins. If the evidence supports these allegations, the Senate must fulfill its constitutional duty. They are building the case for impeachment. Fifth domino, the hostage lever. The U.S. has about 50 citizens held in enemy countries: Iran, Russia, Venezuela, North Korea. We negotiate their release by implicitly threatening consequences. That leverage just diminished. Countries holding American hostages are watching. They see the international community arresting an American president. They are recalculating what America can actually do. For Trump, this is not a legal crisis. It is an existential annihilation. Trump spent 50 years building a persona: the winner, the man who never loses, the man who bent reality to his will. That persona died in a courtroom in The Hague. 2 impeachments didn't affect him. 4 indictments increased his votes. He escaped legal decisions through appeals. He lived in a reality where the consequences were for others. But you can't appeal an ICC warrant. You can't tweet your way out of being a fugitive in 109 countries. Sources inside the White House describe his mood as thermonuclear. Trump woke up, turned on the news, and watched the ICC prosecutor's wanted poster with his face on it. He called his attorney general and demanded that the Justice Department file an emergency injunction to defend presidential immunity from foreign prosecution. Legal experts say this is dead on arrival. Presidential immunity is domestic. It has zero power internationally. Trump called Senate Majority Leader Thune and House Speaker Johnson, demanding emergency legislation to sanction ICC officials. They are taking his temperature, but making no commitments. They know sanctions would destroy America's relationship with Europe. Trump is cornered. For a man whose identity is built on dominance, being cornered is psychological torture. Imagine waking up every morning knowing half the world considers you a war criminal, knowing you can't attend your daughter's wedding in Paris, knowing you can't fly to London, knowing you are imprisoned on American soil like a prisoner in a gilded cage. For Trump, who measures his worth by imperial grandeur and access to power, this is worse than prison. Prison is a place. This is an identity collapse. Mike Pence is silent. He has made no statement. He is reportedly at his home in Indiana, meeting with his legal team and his pastor. Pence is religious. He believes in duty. He believes in the law. He believes in accountability. When the ICC approached him, he faced a choice: protect Trump or protect his conscience. He chose his conscience. In doing so, he destroyed the man he had loyally served for 4 years. There is a Greek tragedy quality to this. The loyal lieutenant, the loyal aide, the man who stood by Trump through 2 impeachments becomes Brutus, delivering the fatal blow for principle. Pence's notes, records, and testimony will define his legacy. Depending on which side of history you stand, he will be remembered as either a traitor or a patriot. But one thing is certain: Mike Pence has made the most important decision of his political life, and it will haunt both him and Trump for the rest of their lives. What is Putin thinking as he sees this morning's headlines? He sees a weak American president, a leader who cannot travel to allied territory without arrest, a commander-in-chief confined to the borders, unable to project power. In authoritarian cultures, power is absolute. The idea that a court could arrest an emperor is unthinkable. In Moscow, Beijing, Tehran, power means immunity. Laws bow to leaders. When Putin sees Trump brought down, he interprets it as American chaos. Democracy isn't working. Look, they're eating their own president. This emboldens him. If Trump can't stop the ICC, how will he stop the Russian army? If Trump can't attend NATO summits, how will he coordinate against aggression? What does Xi Jinping think? China has been watching the erosion of American credibility for years. The chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, political polarization, January 6th. Now an American president declared a war criminal. Xi sees an opportunity. If America's president is toxic, if European allies are drifting away, if the Atlantic alliance is fracturing, this is the moment for Taiwan. Not militarily yet, diplomatically, economically. China can offer Europe an alternative. You don't need America. You need stability. We can provide it. The Belt and Road is expanding. The renminbi is gaining strength as a reserve currency. American influence is eroding. What do our allies think? Britain, France, Germany, countries that stood with America for 75 years. They fought in Korea. They supported us in the Gulf. They deployed to Afghanistan after 9/11. But they are democracies too. They are bound by laws. And the Rome Statute they signed obliges them to enforce ICC arrest warrants. This morning, they chose the alliance over the law. They chose partnership over principle. And that choice sends a message. America is no longer above the law. How does this end? 4 scenarios. Scenario 1, Trump resists. Trump orders Air Force One to London for a state visit. Option A, Britain arrests him. The Secret Service resists. US-UK relations end live on TV. Markets crash. NATO falls apart. The dollar collapses. Option B, the UK backs down and does not enforce the arrest. The ICC loses credibility. International justice collapses. If Trump is arrested, the U.S. has 2 options: rescue him by force, the Hague Invasion Act authorizes this, or leave him in custody. Rescue means war with Europe. Leaving him in ICC custody means abandoning the president. Second scenario, Trump cooperates. Trump voluntarily cooperates with ICC investigators. He provides his own evidence. He argues that freezing aid is a legitimate presidential prerogative. Legal issue, not standard intent. Knowledge plus recklessness. Pence's testimony shows Trump knew. Audio recordings are irrefutable. Political issue, Trump's base sees cooperation as surrender. GOP approval collapses, but cooperation could secure a stay of the warrant. The ICC could accept a deferred prosecution if Trump leaves office, and the U.S. compensates Ukrainian victims. This would require Trump to admit guilt, and Trump has never admitted guilt for anything in his life. Third scenario, Congress takes action. Thune and Johnson strike a bipartisan deal. A censure resolution acknowledging Trump's actions were reckless and harmful, a call for resignation. If Trump refuses, impeachment proceedings begin. This time, Pence is willing to testify. Classified documents exist. International support is there. Current count. 8 Republican senators have privately indicated they will vote for conviction. You need 17 Republicans joining 50 Democrats to remove a president. If the articles include conduct unfit for office and endangering national security through reckless foreign policy, moderate Republicans may calculate that removing Trump is less damaging than the ongoing crisis. This is the least chaotic scenario, but it requires Republican senators to choose the country over the party. Fourth scenario, Trump strikes back. Trump orders the CIA to destabilize ICC funding sources. He orders the Treasury to freeze European assets in U.S. banks. He orders the withdrawal of troops from NATO bases. Or, in the most extreme case, he invokes the Hague Invasion Act. He authorizes a special operations raid on the ICC facilities in The Hague. Can he legally do this? The law is on the books. Will the Pentagon comply? Unknown. If Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Charles Q. Brown determines the order is illegal, he can refuse. This leads to a constitutional crisis where the military defies the commander-in-chief. But if Brown complies and Delta Force operators raid The Hague, the Atlantic Alliance ends immediately. NATO disintegrates. The EU severs diplomatic ties. The UN condemns the US. We become a pariah state. Low probability, but catastrophic. And with Trump, low probability doesn't mean impossible. This isn't just about one president's legal troubles. It's about whether the American Republic can survive the clash between domestic politics and international law. We are witnessing a stress test. Can the Constitution cope with a president wanted by allied countries? Can the separation of powers function when the executive branch is legally constrained by foreign courts? The stakes are rising in concentric circles. Personal. Trump faces an identity crisis. Imprisoned, humiliated, legally cornered. Institutional. The presidency is in crisis. Can a president effectively govern if he cannot travel, conduct diplomacy, or project power? National. America's credibility is shattered. Allies no longer respect it. Enemies no longer fear it. The post-World War II order, where America set the rules, is collapsing. Global. The international system is fracturing. If America withdraws from global leadership, who will fill the void? China? Russia? A ruleless, multipolar chaos? We are in uncharted waters. Maps are useless. The institutions that have guided us for 75 years, NATO, the UN, the Transatlantic Alliance, are under unprecedented pressure. As we enter the next 72 hours, watch 3 critical indicators. First, watch Mike Pence. He has been silent since the order was issued. When he speaks, and he will, his words will determine whether Republican senators have the courage to act. If Pence defends the decision, the evidence was undeniable, that's why I did it, it will give cover to senators considering impeachment. If Pence backs down, Trump survives. Second, watch the Supreme Court. Trump's team will file an emergency petition arguing immunity. The court will decide whether it has authority over ICC orders. Chief Justice Roberts deeply values institutional legitimacy. The court could decide it cannot, should not, intervene. If the court refuses to hear the case, Trump has no legal shield. Third, watch the Pentagon. Watch what General Charles Q. Brown says in the coming days. Watch whether the defense secretary makes a statement. If senior military officers start expressing concern about command chain clarity or operational readiness, that's code. It means the military is questioning whether it can take orders from a president under an international arrest warrant. History books are being written this morning, and for the first time in 249 years, they are being written by a court in The Hague. Donald Trump is a wanted man. Air Force One is grounded. And the American empire is discovering what every empire eventually learns. No one is above the law, not forever.